Hashem, we're studying the 39 Melachot. We're studying the laws of Shabbos, Rabbi Gershon Appel, and we're now in the chapter that's discussing the primary categories of prohibited work. Now, we've defined work as melacha, based upon that fact that this word appears in the construction of the Mishkan. We're on page 87, and it also all the prohibited activities that we know that are prohibited, the 39 primary prohibited activities are activities, excuse me, that we were engaged in when we built the Mishkan. And yesterday we discussed all 39, we listed these 39 prohibited activities. Rabbi Appel continues today to define them on page 87. He says the 39 categories of work are called the Av Melachot. These are principal or primary categories. However, and this we go back to the beginning of Baba Kama, Arba, Avos, Nezikin, 4 primary categories of damaging. That's also a category in the Mishnah called an Av. There's an Av and there's a Tolda. So any activity may be considered an Av Melacha if it is similar to the one of the listed Avot, meaning to say that it's not just these exact activities. If anything is similar to that, it's also going to be considered an Av Melacha. How is it similar? If it's similar in its purpose or objective, or by virtue of a common purpose, even if the activity is not the same. So in 2 ways, we're going to say that even though it's not the exact same name as the Av, if it has a similar purpose, it's also prohibited. So for example, the act of embedding a branch of a tree in the ground so that it will take root and grow into a separate tree. This is like sowing or planting, since in both cases you're putting something in the ground. So sowing is if you sow like a seed into the ground, but included in that Av Melacha is if you take a branch and stick it in the ground. A second example of this would be pruning the branch of a tree. So cutting a branch is not similar to sowing, but it has a common purpose, and the common purpose is causing something to grow. So by pruning, you cause something to grow. So that's also considered to be an Av Melacha. But in addition to the Av Melacha, or on the next page, on page 88, Rabbi Appel points out that there is something called a Toledos, the Toledos. Now, the Toledos means, like we know in the Torah, hello, how you doing, Aviel? Baruch Hashem. We start with the laws of Shabbos. Here, give Aviel a book, the laws of Shabbos. Here. Now you're sitting there, but also, can you grab that stender, please, and put it there so equilibrium will be restored to our either one. Actually, grab both. One will go next to on either side of Jonathan. Then grab the other one. And so the Torah that we know in the parasha and in the Torah, Eila Toledos, this refers to the lineage. The Toledos is the lineage. So Toledos is really like an offspring of the Av. It's also, we'll see how Rabbi Appel defines it. It's also a biblical prohibition, but the thing is that it's not the direct Av, but it's still just as prohibited as the Av. So we'll see the way Rabbi Appel defines it and describes it, because his formulations are so beautiful. We're on page 88. So we're discussing the 39 prohibited activities on Shabbos, the 39 Melachot. Do you know all 39? There's a whole list there, right behind you. There's a whole list. And on page 86, there's a list. And in addition to that, there is the Toledos. So what makes something a Toledos? So he has here 2 main definitions. One, you can read that, Aviel. You read it.
Sure. Each of the Avos.
No, read point 1. What right underneath that? Yeah, if any.
Any act is similar to the listed Av Melacha by virtue of a common purpose or objective. It's considered an Av Melacha as well.
So basically, if it has a common purpose, it's an Av Melacha. Okay, go on.
and when it is directly carried out on the object which it seeks to achieve the purpose intended, but not where it directly involves another object.
Okay, we got to go slowly there. So here, look at this example. For example, watering a plant or tree is considered a tolda of the av malach of sowing. Although watering shares a common purpose with sowing, in that the shared objective is the growth, is not considered an av malacha because the act directly involves the water and not the plant or the tree. But for our purposes, really, it doesn't even matter because the tolda is well, he's going to say how it doesn't matter, but the tolda is also a biblical violation. So just like you're biblically violating the Torah if you plant seeds in the ground, you're also going to be biblically violation if you water those seeds. But one is classified as an av and one is classified as a tolda. Here.
So anything that affects that av is going to be considered a tolda?
Basically, that's what he said in this one. But he gives another example. Another illustration.
The illustration of this distinction will be removing a mound of earth, thereby leveling the ground. Since, like the principal category of plowing, this too serves the objective of preparing the soil for seeding or planting, and the act is carried out on the ground itself. It is considered an av malacha.
However,
removing weeds from the grounds where the act does not directly involve the ground is a tolada, although it has the same objective of preparing or improving the soil as the principal category.
So if you do something on the ground, like leveling it, that's equivalent to plowing, and that's an av. But if you pull up something from the ground without basically touching the ground by pulling up the weeds, it's also preparing it for planting, and that's called a tolada. No, the point is, it is as severe as the av. It's just called something else. There's an av and there's a tolda, but they're both biblically prohibited. In just a moment, we'll see exactly why. Well, they have a footnote here with some halacha consideration, but so far we haven't seen any practical consideration. Read number 2, and then read number 2. Another rule.
Sure. Acts that are of the same nature as a principal category of malacha but do not share a common purpose are considered to be a tolada. Okay,
so this is the opposite. They're the same nature, but they have a different goal. So then it's not an av, but it's a tolada. So, for example,
so thus, filing metal, an act that is similar to grinding corn or other grain, but has a different purpose, which in the case of corn or grain is for food, is therefore considered to be only a tolada of the av malacha of grinding.
You're grinding, but you're not grinding for food. So it's not called, it's prohibited, but it's called a tolada, not the av. Go on.
Similarly, mixing earth with water and kneading it is a tolada of the av malacha of kneading, since too it resembles the av malacha only in the act and not in its purpose.
Okay, read the last 2 sentences. Apart from certain
halacha considerations, the tolada are for all practical purposes equal to the av malachos, in that they are also considered to be biblically prohibited.
And so, so you say, what's the distinction? It's really not. There's really not a distinction except for how we classify it. We have 39 primary ones, but we'll see. Footnote 7, it does say some halachic, some minor esoteric halachic consideration, which are not really relevant today. Today, the practical distinctions are not relevant, but in the time of the Bible, they might have been. Look at footnote 7 here, Avi. I'll read.
Sure. Halachic considerations. Although the classification of av and tolada respectively has no impact on the permissibility of the act, there are 2 areas of law in which the classification is important. First, the Talmud rules that a person who performs multiple malachos unintentionally is obligated to bring sin offering for each malacha. But if you perform the same malacha numerous times, he's obligated to bring one. Yeah, I was actually going to ask that. So too, if he performed an av and it's tolada, he's only obligated to bring one sin offering.
So he only has to bring one sin offering if he does an av and a tolada. If he does 2 separate avos, he has to bring 2 sin offerings. Again, that's not really relevant right now for us because we don't have a base of mikdash, so nobody's bringing sin offerings. So it's a kind of esoteric distinction, not currently practical. And the second area
in which the classification has practical ramifications is regarding the obligation to warn the would-be sinner of his crime.
That's only, yeah. So you have to warn him about which Av Malacha he's violating, even though he's violating a Toledo. That's nowadays, again, that's not applicable because we're not warning anybody because you only warned before you committed the before you executed them. Then they require to be warned, but nobody's warning anybody. And if you are warning somebody, it's not so that you could properly punish them. It's just to help them understand. So if you just said, all you would do today is if you saw somebody needing earth and water, you wouldn't say, don't do that. That's part of the Av Malacha of Lush. You wouldn't say that. You would just say, I do that on Shabbos. Don't do that. And if they ask you why, say it's part of the category of Lush. But you wouldn't. So they're not really relevant today, except for the fact that it's relevant because you need, in order for all of us to understand the laws of Shabbos, we have to understand the basic framework, and from there we'll be able to um, we'll be able to um, we'll be able to apply the laws better. Yes, Javier.
So for an Av and a Tolada, if you violate both of those, you need to bring only one chatas. But we know that also Tolada is also deraisa, but it's not really. It's like almost like right above Derabanan, but like a little bit below deraisa because you only need to bring one chatas if you will.
No, it's the reason why you only bring one chatas is not because it's not a biblical law, but because you only bring, if you didn't know that this malacha was prohibited, you didn't know that kneading was prohibited, and you needed flour and water, and then you needed earth and water. It's one sin offering because you didn't know that this was prohibited. You didn't know both because they're both part of the same category. But if you just didn't know that it was prohibited and all you did was mix the earth and water, you would still also bring one. So it's a complete biblical law. It's not rabbinic. It's that's just the way it is.
If you did two Toledos, would that be two chatas?
If they're two separate prohibitions, two
So
separate, they're not. Then it would be one. If they're two separate avos, then it would be two.
I hear that. All goes by the Av for the chatas.
Well, it goes by the category. If it's which one of those 39 it fits into. If they're all part of the same 39, they're all part of, let's say, kneading, then they're all going to get one. That's the point.
Interesting.
Okay, so now that's beautiful. Okay, we're moving right along. And now we'll go to the parsha of the week. This week we have a double portion. Let me just stop this recording. Hold on.